Hey everybody, this is Daniel. Welcome back. I don't know what your week has been like, but mine has been beyond words. Between anger, sadness, fury, exhaustion, hopeful, and all emotions in between, it's been a week. There's been just numerous instances of police brutality across the country in response to police brutality protests, which I think the irony should not be lost on us. And yet, and still, we're in a moment. And that moment allows us to talk about police brutality, police violence, police corruption, systemic racism, all in ways that people weren't listening before. And I don't say that to criticize people, although some people do deserve criticism. Others, they need to see this for this to register. And so, we're going to take advantage of that moment, and I'm going to push every way that I can through social media, through these videos, donations, everything I can do in my ways to help those who are on the ground fighting for our freedom and fighting for justice. And so it's been a week, but I appreciate you joining us. Today, I want to talk about the importance of not letting up, that we have to keep pushing, and why it's important that we keep pushing right now, even when we might be tired and exhausted, like I mentioned before. Now, before I jump into that, I want to first give a birthday shout out. She would have been 27 this week. I'm recording this on Sunday, June 7th. Yeah. Dates have no meaning anymore during this COVID-19 police brutality situation. I barely remember what days of the week are just because I'm working from home. So she would have turned 27 this past Friday. She had talked about wanting to have a baby before Christmas. She had said that 2020 was going to be her year, and police made sure it was her last year. They barged into her home with a no-knock warrant in the middle of the night, and they took her life. And as of this recording, haven't seen anyone arrested for it. I haven't seen anyone charged. I've seen an FBI investigation opened up, but it frankly doesn't feel like it's enough. We're protesting. People are protesting on behalf of George Floyd. People are mad because of what happened to George Floyd, and rightfully so. We should be furious about that. But it matters what happened to Breonna Taylor as well. Her flame was snuffed out, and she didn't do anything to deserve it. And that's police brutality, because so many people are under the false illusion that you have to do something wrong for the police to deal with you in a particular way. And we black folks who have been aware for a long time, and brown folks and white folks who have done their research, that that's not how it works. And frankly, that's never been how it works. And so when I share things on social media, I've used the hashtag We've Seen Enough. And the reason I've used that hashtag is it was suggested by Benjamin Dixon, who does a fantastic podcast. You need to be listening to him. He is fed up and furious with everything going on. He's offering strong criticism. It's intelligent, it's honest, it's courageous. You need to be listening to the Benjamin Dixon Show. And so I thought it would be good to use that hashtag because we have seen enough. We're tired of it. Understand what's going on here. I think this bears repeating. People are protesting police brutality, and the police's response is police brutality. They are beating people, and they're not beating looters, because some of y'all like to create that distinction because it makes you feel better. And my thing is, I'm going to put the focus and keep the focus where it needs to be, which is police brutality. Because there's a way, measured responses to things. But what we're seeing from the police is it doesn't matter. If you're a legal observer, they're roughing you up, they're arresting you. If you're a medic, they're roughing you up, they're arresting you. If you're a pregnant woman, they're shooting non-lethal tear gas rounds into your car. If you are a woman just coming home from work, they're snatching you off your bike. If you're an elderly man, they're shoving you on the ground and you're bleeding out of your ear like in Buffalo. And this is not in just one case. This is Atlanta, where they snatched those young college students out of their cars, broke their windows, but they didn't do it to the kids in the white car in front of them. They're doing this in New York. They're doing this in LA. They're doing it in Chicago. They're doing it in Buffalo, as I mentioned before. They're doing it everywhere. They're doing it in Denver. And you know why they're doing it everywhere? Because they can. Like, everybody brings up the example of a few bad apples, but nobody completes it. This was said on Twitter, and it was a great point. The full saying is, a few bad apples spoil the bunch. Okay? And the bunch has been spoiled. And that's why we're fed up. That's why we've seen enough. And that's why we're pushing in all the ways that we can for total change. Because from my standpoint, from the standpoint of a lot of us, the bunch has been spoiled. Okay? When they are pushing and shoving elderly men, elderly people, and doing it without remorse, taking SUVs into areas with protesters, smashing up water bottles and food and aid that's going to protesters, herding them in, blocking them in on bridges and in parking garages. Like, this is not what a free country does. This is not what a country... Like, my school had the nerve to have me stand up every morning, put my hand over my heart, and pledge allegiance to this flag and to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And yet, do you see that outside? I don't see it. And it's not like people... Look, all people are doing is capturing video of what these cops are doing. That's all. The revolution... I saw somebody say on Twitter, and that was one of the realest things I heard that day, that the smartphone has done more for justice in like the last 20 or so years than maybe any person has. Because it has put a lens literally on police brutality. And people still argue with it. Part of what makes people so furious about George Floyd is that he's talking through losing his life. And the cop just decided, I don't want to get up, and I don't have to. And so we are mad, we are furious, we're fed up, and we should be. We should, look, I saw somebody say it on Twitter. They said, if your timeline calms down, you need to shake the table again. And she was right. If you see people starting to kind of bring it back to normal, you need to shake the table and remind them that we still have a police brutality problem in this country. We still have a systemic racism problem in this country. And corporations putting out these vague statements is not going to solve the problem. Okay? People saying they stand with us. 'Cause I'm going to tell you something. A lot of these statements, I don't see them mentioning police in it. They say everything in it but police. They'll say this person was murdered. This person lost their life. We need to stand up. We need to fight racism. Cool. As my favorite show says. But are you mentioning that it was police that did this and police that keep doing this? Because if you're not, I'll be honest, a lot of this seems hollow. And that leads me to the next point. When I say that we shouldn't let up, what I mean is we need to push for transformative, total change and not accept these empty gestures because the system does not want to change. Okay? That's important. The system doesn't want to change. And so the system is going to throw you every bone it can so that you will let up. Because not only does the system not want to change, but when I say the system doesn't want to change, let me highlight an example of what I mean. There's a lot of people, whether they're cops, okay, cops' wives, cops' families, police unions, DAs, mayors, politicians, governors, president, senators, congresspeople, whoever it is. People who depend, and the corporations who have government contracts like Amazon and others, who depend on the status quo of the police as they are constructed. Their jobs depend on it, their careers depend on it, their positions of power and influence depend on it, everything. Their identities depend on it. There's some people who identify entirely with being a cop and doing things the way that cops do it now, which is unacceptable. And so they're going to push back with all the fight that's in them because they don't want real change. And it is up to us to not fall for hollow, empty gestures. So, for example, when cops kneel, we should look at that with derision, and we should not accept it, because they didn't kneel when Cap was kneeling. They didn't kneel. They had plenty of time to do that. And they will kneel 1 minute, and then when the cameras are gone, they will beat us the next. It's an empty gesture. When they dance, when they cry, when they hug, they will hug you 1 minute, and then they will choke you out the next. Empty gestures aren't policy. It's not enough. Okay? And so for example, when the DC mayor has Black Lives Matter painted on the road, great, we'll take that. But we're not taking only that, because that's not change. We want real policy changes. I don't just want policy reform. Okay? I want policy transformation. I don't want the policies to just reform. I want them to transform. I want to see the police state as we currently have it deconstructed and torn apart. Okay? I want us to pull money out of these police departments that have way too much money and are using it to buy equipment, military equipment, and then brutalize people in the communities. I want the police to be demilitarized. I want that money redirected into communities. I want us to address the root of systemic racism around this country. I want us to rebuild communities so that cops have less reasons and excuses to go into communities and rough people up. I want us to rebuild the police, and I want the police to reflect the community approach that so many of us want. And this isn't new to me, okay? I'm not trying to take credit for any of this. Activists and organizers have been saying this for the longest time, and I'll share some of those resources with you at the end of the video. But that's what so many are looking for. We don't want to return to status quo. The status quo is literally killing people. We want total systemic change. And we're seeing that in some places as far as conversation, baby steps. Minneapolis City Council is talking about big changes and transformation. The Minneapolis police, they lost their contract with the University of Minnesota and the Board of Education there, which they should have lost a long time ago, because school to prison pipeline is another extension of systemic racism that is a problem that activists have been working on tirelessly for decades, and that needs to be addressed. So, it's not enough for us to accept empty gestures. We need to be fighting for real and systemic change. And those changes are things that I've referenced: defunding the police, abolishing the police state as it currently stands, and rebuilding something new in the wake of it. Demilitarizing the police, definitely. We need to be fighting for total change. Okay, so you may be asking, like, what can you do? You're hearing this, and you're trying to figure out how you could get involved. Okay, so what you could do is share this video to people who don't understand this, because we're all in different places in our journey. Okay, and when they see this, it may click in a way that it hasn't before, because not everybody had to learn about racism growing up. I get it, but the moment is here, and the time is now. And what you choose to do in this moment speaks to who you are. It does. That's just the truth of it, whether people like it or not. I'm going to include resources of how you could donate to different groups as far as mutual aid organizations. I'm going to include some information, some resources on how to research policing. My goal is to give you some information so that you can do the work for yourself, because understand what needs to happen. If you're not familiar with this, if you've not connected with this, then it's important that you educate yourself on this, and that you reflect on what you're learning and what you're digging through, to understand, okay, how does this affect me? What were my preconceived notions? Why did I think this? How can I do better? And then you got to have those difficult conversations with your friends and family. Okay, it just is what it is. That's where we are. Now, some of you may say, well, Daniel, I'm white. Like, can I do anything that's really going to help and make a difference? I get what you're saying. I know that that's a concern. I've heard it from people. And so I'm not saying that to be funny. I know that's real. What I would tell you is this: there are going to be people who listen to you that would never listen to me, just by virtue of your connection to them, your relationship with them, and the fact you're white. That's just the reality. It's always been like that. And that's why it's important that you get in this fight. Because, there goes my text. Sorry. So it's important that you talk to people around you once you educate yourself on this subject and once you reflect. It's really important because they may not listen to anyone else but you. Or you may be the one who could connect to them in a way that others haven't. And so it's important that we all do what we can in our own lanes, in our own different ways, to push this forward. Because we got people sacrificing their bodies and their lives out on the streets for us. The least we can do is educate ourselves, reflect, share, talk, do everything that we can to help out. Now, if you're a person who's dealing with a lot because this has been such a rough week, I'm not trying to stress you or pressure you into doing anything. I'm just saying do what you can. If you can't do anything, if it's too much, if you need to just step back, I get it. But if you could do something, if you could push this needle forward, let's all do what we can to push this forward. To wrap up, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been giving support and reaching out. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your kindness. It's been a rough week, but we're going to keep pushing forward and doing what we could do to make this world just a little bit better. If you want to follow my work, you can find me on Facebook, Daniel Troutman. You can find me on Twitter, DB Troutman. D is in Daniel, B is in boy. I don't like sharing my middle name, so that's all you'll get. Troutman, Instagram, the Daniel Troutman, and my website, danieltroutman.com. Building all that up, trying to be a support and a resource to everyone during these times. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you take care. I don't know what next week's going to look like, but I know that we'll be in this, and let's make sure we stay in this together.